Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Book of Mormon Allegory channel. I'm your host, and today we're going to be going over some signs of the times for 2024. I kind of told myself that I wasn't going to do any more signs of the times type videos, but there's just so many things going on that I couldn't help myself. So, last one, I promise. So this is from the book that I just put out, The Way. It's about the Book of Mormon allegory. Basically, it is my take on how the timeline of the Book of Mormon matches up with our individual path back to God, and also how it matches with the global timeline or the timeline of America. Essentially, we are right around down here, towards the end of at least the chapters in this book, where we are deep in the pride cycle. This is mid-Helaman, and it's right before, I believe, the people of the Nephites lose their lands. A lot of people that do match our timeline up with the Book of Mormon think that, oh, we're somewhere in Third Nephi. Um, I don't think so. I think we're a little earlier. We're in mid-Helaman here, where we are steeped in pride and we are about to go through some tribulations. And it was amazing to me how well this all matched up. And we're going to go through it just real quick here, just to give you a little taste of how this is matching up with our timeline here in America. So we have the war chapters here in Alma. This is the years in the Book of Mormon from the Judges. So that matches up with World War I, World War II, which ended in 1945. At the end of Alma, there's this brief invasion of the Lamanites that are pushed back to their borders. That could be the Korean War, where the communists invade, and then they're pushed right back to the same border where they started from in North Korea. And then you've got basically 10 years of prosperity in the Book of Mormon, where from 31 to 40 to 41, there's really no big issues happening. That matches up very well with what we have going on here. The World Wars end in 1945, and Vietnam starts in 1955. So we're seeing a lot of correlations here already just through the end of Alma. We jump into Helaman here, and we start going through Judges. So this is going to match up very well with Ezra's Eagle prophecy, if you're familiar with that. We'll talk about it in a little bit. So first we have Pahoran. He starts his chief judge rule here in the year 40. He is assassinated. That matches well with JFK. This is also when we are introduced to the secret combinations. Interestingly enough, JFK made it a point in his presidency to identify and even fight against these secret combinations, and many believe that's one of the reasons he was assassinated. He had this somewhat famous quote where he said, "The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings." He was assassinated a few years later. The next president, or chief judge, in the Book of Mormon timeline is Pecumeni. He is taken out with an attack on the Capitol. This could be thought of as Nixon through the Watergate scandal. Why was he taken out? He threatened to reveal about the CIA involvement with JFK. So we are seeing some correlations there. Then we jump to Helaman. He is almost assassinated by the same assassin, Kishkumen, but he's saved by his servant. Well, this matches well with Reagan, who is almost assassinated, but the assassin was thwarted by the Secret Service. He was hit by a ricochet, but he lived out his 2 terms to the end, just like Helaman lived out his days as chief judge until the end of his life. So not a short feather there. We then go to Nephi. This is Helaman's son. He ends up giving up his seat prematurely due to the corruption in the government. It says Nephi delivered up the judgment seat to a man whose name was Sizoram For as their laws and their governments were established by the voice of the people, and they who chose evil were more numerous than they who chose good, therefore they were ripening for destruction, for the laws had become corrupted. Well, that should kind of remind you of Trump, who will be the next short feather. He also gave up his seat prematurely due to the corruption in the government. And then we go to Caesarum, which would be Biden today. He ended up being murdered by an unknown hand as he sat upon the judgment seat. Now note, I've got the years here for a reason. Nephi, he lasted for 9 years before he gave up the judgment seat. Caesarum only lasted for 4. His tenure was shorter than Nephi's. That'll be important in a little bit. And then Caesarum's son follows. He's assassinated the same year, in actually the same verse here in Helaman 6. It says that in the same year his son was also murdered. So that would be whoever's next in line. This, as I was mentioning, matches very well with Ezra's eagle. So if you're not familiar with that, he details a three-headed eagle that has all these feathers that seem to match very well with presidents in the United States. There are 2 short feathers in the middle on the right wing, which match with JFK and Nixon. They just happen to match with these 2 Nephite chief judges. And then there is a chief judge that's almost assassinated, just like we had. Then you go to the left wing. You've got 6 feathers, 2 are taken away till the end, but 1 is set up and shortly appears no more. That would be Nephi in the Nephite timeline, or Trump in the Ezra's eagle timeline. And then the second, this is important, was sooner away than the first. So that would be Biden. He matches with Caesarum. And then there are 2 that remained that thought themselves to reign. And when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that was at rest, in the one in the midst. And he joins with these other 2 heads. And behold, the head that was turned with them that were with it did eat up the 2 feathers under the wing that would have reigned. So whatever this is, basically there are 2 that thought to take the reign here in this lineup that Ezra is detailing here of the American presidents, and they are taken out. Well, that matches with Caesarum's son, who is taken out in the same verse as Caesarum, indicating that all 3 are taken out at the same time. What does that look like? We're not really sure, but it does detail very specifically that it's going to happen sooner than this first short feather on the left, which would be 4 years. Trump lasted 4 years. He was a short feather, I believe, because he should have lasted longer, and it was stolen from him. Biden, therefore, needs to last less than 4 years. Interestingly enough, this seems to be playing out before our very eyes, which is why I felt the need to make this video. A few days ago, on the 8th, there was a lot of stuff that happened. It is like we are seeing prophecy beginning to be fulfilled. So, if you missed it, and probably not too many did, but the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who is a Democrat, he was appointed by Clinton initially, and then appointed to the Attorney General position by Biden. He appoints Robert Hur, who is a Republican. Now that's interesting that he would appoint a Republican that is a supporter of Trump, some say, to oversee the Department of Justice Special Counsel to investigate Biden's mishandling of classified information. If you remember, Biden had just as much, if not more, classified information in his household, in his garage, in very unsecure locations as they tried to pin on Trump, who did have the authority to declassify information as a president. Biden did not as a vice president. So there was a push to have him prosecuted for this. Yeah, essentially, this special counsel ruled that Biden did break the law, but he cannot be prosecuted on account of his memory. Now, for the past 3 years, most of us have seen that there's a problem there. But it has been hush hush, and no one has been able to say anything about it. It has not been picked up by the mainstream media. And now, all of a sudden, we have this very public report being released by, or at least under the oversight of Mr. Garland here, that says, quote, that Biden is a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, that his memory has significant limitations. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting when his term ended. This, I guess, was Biden saying, if it was in 2013, when did I stop becoming vice president? He can't remember. And he couldn't remember when his term began. 2019, am I still vice president? Mr. Biden's memory appears to have significant limitations. His conversations are painfully slow. So, that was a bombshell report that, as I mentioned, Garland, he read it. He said, yes, I am committed to making this report public. Now, why would the Attorney General, who's appointed by Biden, who is a staunch Democrat, get the go-ahead to release not only a damaging report, but one that is questionable as well, as far as its political motivations? Was this a hit piece? What gave Mr. Hur the authority to make determinations on Biden's mental health? It's interesting. I guess we'll just kind of leave it at that. At the same time, so this is posting the same day that the Supreme Court voted unanimously that Colorado couldn't keep Trump off the ballot. Okay. Same day that Tucker interviews Putin. And you could contrast that with Biden's press conference that came out that very night as a rebuttal to the special counsel's report. In that press conference, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was painful. He said that the president of Mexico, Sisi, when he was referring to Egypt, and they opened it up to the media, and both sides just ate him alive. Like, he was just getting hit from all sorts of sides. He got really angry. He was yelling at reporters. It was ugly. This is coming the same week that he mixed up red and blue states. He said they're red and green states. He said on more than one occasion that he had been speaking recently with dead leaders of other countries that have been dead for multiple years. He forgot the name of Hamas. It's almost like they've removed his medications. I feel like that's sad to say, but man, as far as gaffes go, this is one heck of a week. So it almost seems like the jig is up. That they can't hide it anymore, or they don't want to hide it anymore. And why? Like, why would they do that? So I believe this is only the beginning. It will take some time to unravel, but we are in the middle of the primaries, and by the time this does unravel, there's not much time left for primaries, and currently Biden is unchallenged. It makes you think that this was the plan all along. Start having the primaries. No one else is contesting. No one else is going to be getting any votes. And now they have an off-ramp to justify ditching Biden. Now they can select whoever they want to be the next placeholder for the shadow government. And this effectively circumvents a primary for the Democrats, the DNC, which that makes me mad for those that do identify in the political party of Democrats. They are getting gypped. This is kind of sad. So I don't know, Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I wonder if there will be outrage, or will the left just be happy to accept whoever is put up. But according to Ezra's eagle, whoever that person is, whoever thinks to take the rule, they are just going to be upon as well. There's going to be a checkmate move where this eagle head rises up and eats them up. And then the eagle head's in charge, and they put the whole earth in fear. They bear rule over it. Much oppression. What is this going to look like that brings on all this oppression, where the government, basically power is consolidated into one or a group of individuals' hands? Guess we'll find out. So let's move on. We've got the eclipse coming up. That's coming up in 2 months. I've talked about this before. How the pattern of the eclipses is making an X or a Tav, which is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's like signifying the end. We had the one in 2017. Each of these eclipses is exactly 42 months apart, or 3.5 years, which is really interesting. So the one in 2017, it crosses from west to east across America. Basically, the Western Hemisphere is underlined here. 3.5 years later, 3.5 years later, coming up in just a few months, it is now completed, and we are crossed off. This is a period of 7 years, which many think was the 7 years of plenty. And what follows the 7 years of plenty? Well, we've got 7 years of famine, which brings us to the next set. Here we are 3.5 years later, 2027. We're starting to cross here through the Middle East. The eastern continents are underlined here, and another 3.5 years to finish it up, and it is crossed off. Interestingly enough, it is crossing right through the Red Sea here, right next to Jerusalem. So let's talk a little more about the eclipse here. Yes, it does make an X or a Tav, but there was also an annular solar eclipse just last year, which turns this into an A, or the Aleph, which is actually the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. This is important because now you've got the first and you've got the last, the Aleph and the Tav, which should raise some eyebrows. So the Aleph comes from the hieroglyph of the ox. You can think of these as both being Christ-centric, where Christ takes upon us initially our burdens. Think of him as the ox bearing up under the yoke of our sins, and then it is finished off with the cross, the first and the last, the yoke and the cross. These are not happenstance. This is not, just something interesting that is happening. It is a sign from our Father in heaven to let us know that He's coming. He's coming soon. The eclipse is not a good sign for America or for the world. It's a sign that light is being extinguished, and it's always been a bad omen in the past. So, first and the last, last and the first, this seems to be the case. So you got first the Aleph here in America, the last, the Tav, here in the Middle East. And after the first 7 years here, that could be the 7 years of plenty. What follows, I would suspect, is 3.5 years of tribulations that we all know needs to happen before Christ comes here in America. In those 3.5 years, we are slated to endure a civil war, World War III, the three eagle heads rising and falling, and the Antichrist coming on their heels, being kicked out, going to the Middle East, and oppressing Jerusalem for another 3.5 years there to complete 7 years of famine. which might end up in the middle of this. I guess we'll have to talk about that later. But there's also a first and last in the first sequence here in the eclipses here. Namely, it starts in the west. In 2017, it crosses over Independence, Missouri. It then goes here in 2024. It will go right through Kirtland, Ohio, and Palmyra, New York, as is noted here. So, first and last in the first. The church started in Palmyra, so we're going backwards now. Started in Palmyra, Cumorah here, went to Fayette, New York, moved to Kirtland, so we're going backwards up through 2024, and then once again we're back here in Independence, and then to the west. So these again are not happenstance. It is amazing that it is going right through some most likely old Nephite lands, but also early church history lands here. So that's what it's doing on the ground. What's it doing in the sky? So when you have the eclipse, there is the constellation behind it. It just happens to be right through the bands of Pisces, which is a constellation of two fish. We have always associated the church or members as fish. There's the classic symbol of the fish representing a Christian. So this can be thought of as the church being released from the bands that are attached or tethered to this constellation, which is Cetus, which is basically a sea monster, part dragon or part reptile, part whale or fish, part mammal. It's this kind of conglomeration. You think of that as the fourth beast in Daniel, or also Satan. It is being released from the bands of death. So this is a bad sign from the world, but it can also be a hopeful sign for the church. Interestingly enough, in 2034, the eclipse over Israel is also in Pisces. So that could be, these two fish can be thought of as Ephraim and Judah, both being released through Christ. So, one other interesting thing, and this will bring us to the next point. So, the eclipse actually starts here in the south and goes up here through the north. Where does it enter into America? Well, if you zoom in, it just happens to enter right over a place called Eagle Pass. And if that rings a bell, it should, because we are having basically an invasion of America by illegal immigrants that have just blown up since Biden has taken office, to the tune of around 10 million in the last 3 years, which in 1 year under Biden it's greater than all 4 years under Trump, is what the estimates are showing. This is facilitated and pushed by the current administration. He publicly has said that he wants a path for documentation for those that are already here. In other words, amnesty. The real reason is the more people that they bring in that overwhelmingly vote Democrat, if they can get these people to vote, they can turn swing states into blue states. Here we are, a lot in Michigan, a lot in Georgia, Florida, mostly in Texas. If you can turn Texas, which has 38 electoral votes, basically it's over. Democrats will never lose again. They're bringing with them a ton of fentanyl, over 110,000 deaths last year. So this is overdosing or deaths from drugs up until about 2020 here, and then we just got this huge spike. Now we're up to almost 120,000. The other concerning thing is most of these people that are coming over, they do not like America. This is a gentleman who as an illegal immigrant. He, along with a bunch of friends, attacked New York police officers, was released without any bail, just basically went free, and he's given us the finger, just like New York has given their people the finger, promising $53 million as a handout in prepaid credit cards to migrant families. They are building tents. They have an elaborate bus system that ships these people all over, or flights. Who's paying for this? And why? Well, I think we have an idea of why. Here's just a few other statistics that it's not just people from Latin America coming over. It used to be a lot of these, just from Latin American countries. Here we are, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, it's starting to ramp up. And here in 2022, 2023, things start changing. What's this big blue one? Oh, that's Venezuela. Well, it's been known that Venezuela is emptying their prisons and sending prisoners over here. Here we have a Venezuelan 15-year-old who somehow came with a gun and shot a tourist in New York. That's awesome. The other interesting blip on the radar here is this orange bar. What's that? Oh, that's China. Huh. Well, Chinese migrant encounters are actually the fastest growing migrant population in the last 2 years. They have exploded. In 2023, there was 37,000 so far. In 2024, we're up to almost 20. Why? I mean, yeah, they might want to be escaping the CCP, or they might be sent over. As you notice, most of these Chinese migrants are young, military age type gentlemen. This is another interesting graph here, if you can see that. Here's Trump. Not too many. Oh, man, what happened there? There's other people coming over that are, scary, not good players. This is a gentleman who, when he was interviewed at the border, he said, "Soon you will know who I am." Well, he's been identified. We know who he is. He's an Islamic terrorist. He was just released January 19th of 2023, and now he's somewhere in our country. They don't know where. So, what is the point? What's it getting to? Essentially, right here at Eagle Pass, which was right where the Eclipse was going over, the Texas Governor Abbott has basically said enough. There is a standoff between him and Biden and the feds. The feds are down here trying to take down the razor wire. They are putting it back up as fast as it's being taken down. What are they doing? Why are they bringing in all these migrants? And if you notice, they are all, at least here, they look like they're all military age young men. So basically he's putting us between a rock and a hard place. Either we do nothing and the influx continues, basically bankrupts America, changes America. It's converting swing states into blue states, Texas into a blue state. And this isn't about politics. This is about what's right and wrong. This is illegal. This just isn't right. But what I think they were hoping would happen is that, through this crisis that has been created, the people will get sick of it. They will get fed up and revolt, and that is basically what's happening. These are all states here that have committed to support Texas. Some have even sent National Guard troops down into Texas to help secure the border. And my suspicion is that the administration currently is hoping that someone really gets sick of it and does something foolish. And then you know, they can label the right as terrorists, declare martial law, no election. Basically it's coming to civil war. And if it does come to a civil war, who do you think all of these young, able-bodied migrants that are being let into the country for free and given free health care and free credit cards and phones and lodging, who are they going to fight for? Because they're not going to fight for the side that's trying to kick them out and tell them that they need to get in line and do this legally and have a good vetting process. So that's ominous, and it's ominous that the eclipse is going right through where the focal point of this is happening. It's all coming, down to Eagle Pass here. So, Civil War. Is there any support for that? Didn't we learn our lesson the first time? Uh, well, if you turned back to the allegory, we were talking about Trump being analogous to Nephi, maybe not in character, but at least as a placeholder. That would put us here in mid-Helaman. Nephi has stepped down from the judgment seat due to the corruption of the government, just as Trump has. But then what happens next to Nephi? So if we follow this along, Nephi then is, so this is from the chapter headings, corrupt judges seek to incite the people against Nephi. So he is brought before this kangaroo court. He's got lawyers and judges after him. Oh, that sounds very similar to what is happening to Trump right now. Nephi then identifies the actual murderers, those that had killed the chief judge. He exposes essentially the secret combination, despite their attempts to pin it on him. There is a lot of thought and hope that Trump has a trump card, that he has an ace up his sleeve, and that he has dirt on the deep state that he can expose them. That's where a lot of the hopium comes from. But here we are with an account here in the Book of Mormon where his placeholder does the exact same thing that we're kind of hoping and expecting Trump to do. Then the people, some accept him, and others continue to reject him, and lo and behold, what happens? They would not hearken to his words. There began to be contentions, insomuch that they were divided against themselves and began to slay one another with the sword. This isn't Nephites against Lamanites. This is Nephites against Nephites. This is civil war, which hasn't been as big of an issue among the Nephites, but here we are after Nephi leaves the judgment seat, is brought before corrupt judges, identifies the secret combination, the people go to civil war. And this war is only stopped through divine judgment as the Lord sends a famine. Well, that could be 7 years of famine coming up. Here we are in D&C 8745. It says, after many days, slaves shall rise up against their masters, who shall be marshaled and disciplined for war. A lot of people thought, oh, that's the first Civil War. Well, there weren't a lot of slaves that actually fought in that war. I believe this is talking about the last days. And who are these slaves? Well, it's a lot of poor people that are rising up and fighting against the middle class. And it says that the remnants who are left of the land will marshal themselves and shall become exceedingly angry and shall vex the Gentiles with a sore vexation. So I know we like to think of the remnants as people that will come here in 3 Nephi 20:16. It says, then shall ye who are remnant of the house of Jacob go forth among them. Ye shall be in the midst of them, who shall be many. Ye shall be among them as a lion among the beasts of the forest, and as a young lion among the flocks of sheep, who if he goeth through, both treadeth down and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. I know that the fulfillment of that prophecy is with the lost 10 tribes, the true remnant. But a lot of times the Lord has a precursor. He has like portions to fullnesses where we get basically like a little taste of what's coming. You can think of 9/11 as a little precursor if we continue down this path of self-destruction. Here, could this be indicating a precursor to that? These remnants that are left of the land, they will vex the Gentiles. They are like the first wave that will be culminated when the lost 10 tribes come and clean things up. It's a thought. Is there more quotes and support for an idea of Civil War 2.0? Well, there's actually a lot. We'll run through these in quick order here. So here's a gentleman who heard the prophet say that the next great U.S. Civil War, after the War of the Rebellion, would commence in a little town now called Chicago. Well, if you know anything about Chicago, that's, I think, the highest murder rate currently. It will have grown to a large city. At the time, Chicago was smaller than Nauvoo when he made this prophecy, so he's got that right. And then another brother told me the prophet said that the next great trouble would be originate from the depreciation of the currency of the United States. Well, if you know what's happening with BRICS and the currency, we're getting there. So here's an interview with David Whitmer. They asked about when the temple would be built in Independence. He said, right after the Great Tribulation is over. Well, what do you mean by that? A civil war more bloody and cruel than the rebellion. It will be the smashing up of this nation, at which time the second great work has to be done, a work like Joseph Smith did, and the translation of the sealed plates and peace all over. So there's some silver lining on the horizon. If we can get through the Civil War, we got the sealed plates and peace to follow it up with Zion. Here's another one with Orson Pratt. When then will be the condition of the people when the great and dreadful war will come? It will be very different from the war between the North and the South. It will be neighborhood against neighborhood, city against city, town against town, state against state, and they will go forth destroying and being destroyed. So, New York left without inhabitants. Sounds like that's coming. Here's from Joseph Smith himself. He said, I saw men hunting the lives of their own sons, brother against brother, women killing their daughters, daughters against mothers, armies against armies, blood, fire, desolation, the whole bit. He said, I am prepared to say by the authority of Jesus Christ that not many years shall pass away before the United States shall present such a scene of bloodshed as has not had a parallel in the history of our nation. Pestilence, hail, famine, and earthquake will sweep the wicked of this generation from off the face of the land to open and prepare the way for the return of the lost 10 tribes of Israel from the north country. And that will have to be a discussion for another day. Here's Heber C. Kimball. He said that basically the government would dissolve all the laws of the land, and a time would come when the government would stop the saints from holding meetings. Well, we had a precursor of that with COVID, and Elder Bednar said that we would not tolerate that again. When this was done, the Lord would pour out his judgments. Here's another from Heber C. Kimball. After a while, the Gentiles will gather to this place by the thousands. Salt Lake City will become one of the most wicked cities in the world. That's happening. Spirit of speculation and extravagance will take possession of the saints, and the result will be financial bondage. Persecution comes next, and all true Latter-day Saints will be tested to the limit. Many will apostatize, and others will stand still, not knowing what to do. A test is coming. We heard that in conference a few years ago. So here's from Joseph Smith by Mosiah Hancock. He said there will be two great political parties in this country. One will be called the Republican and the other the Democrat. These two parties will go to war, and out of these two parties will spring another party, which will be the Independent American Party. We're going to spend our strength warring in other lands. This is about basically these other lands coming to America and the start of World War III, which we can say that for another time too. Let's get through Civil War first. So Last Sign. This is a oldie but a goodie. It's one of my personal favorites, and some may roll their eyes at this, but that's okay. I think it's interesting. Um, does the Lord talk to us through football? Maybe. So, as you know, the Chiefs and the 49ers are playing today in Super Bowl. I don't know what this is. Um, but it's basically the exact same as 2020, which was an interesting Super Bowl. At that time, it was also the Chiefs and the 49ers. I took it to be symbolic since the Chiefs are from Jackson County, Missouri, Kansas City, which is the land of Zion. The 49ers are from San Francisco, which can be thought of as Babylon or Sodom and Gomorrah. And it matched up with an old Indian chief prophecy. And this was the prophecy, if you don't remember. He said a vision opened up to him. He was praying about, when the end was coming and how much time he had to prepare. He said he was looking down on a football stadium filled with red. Both teams are red. He recognized all of the red people were wearing, and the Kansas City Chiefs were playing. And it was the Super Bowl. A voice told him that when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, we would be out of time to prepare. When the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, we'd be down to weeks, possibly just a few months, before life as we know it would end and the end times would begin. That was the end of his experience. So, if you remember, in 2020, the Chiefs finally made it back to the Super Bowl. They had a losing streak for years. This is the first time they were back, and they had this miraculous comeback, 3 touchdowns in the last 7 minutes, and won the game. I took this as a fulfillment of this prophecy. He basically said that life as we know it would end. This was in February of 2020, and as you remember, what happened? COVID hit. It was like a week or two later, and life's never been the same. So I took that as at least a partial fulfillment. We've talked about portions to fullnesses, how the Lord gives us a little precursor before the real thing. So, is that what this was? Well, if we go through the other years, is there any other hints here that the Lord might be teaching through this peculiar presentation through football? It is the largest stage in the world as far as sports event goes, and he might be preaching a sermon through these football players. Who knows? But let's go on to the other years. So 2021, the Chiefs, which I took to represent the good. This was right during the election. At least what I saw as the stealing of the election. Trump had just given up the presidency, and I took this as the Chiefs. Somehow Trump was going to have this comeback, and the Buccaneers, who are the thieves, these pirates, they represented the Biden administration stealing the election. And I'm like, okay, they're going to have this comeback, and somehow it's going to work out. I was hopped up on hopium, but they lost, and the election was stolen, which is interesting. So basically, the Chiefs against the Buccaneers, they lost. Trump did lose the election to Biden, or had it stolen. And then 2022, Chiefs didn't go, but not too much happened that year, at least on a national stage. 2023, the Chiefs versus the Eagles. All right, so is there any correlation there? Well, this was the only time two brothers, the Kelsey brothers, faced off against each other in a Super Bowl on separate teams. So this can be thought of as Zion versus America, or at least these three-headed eagle America, brother against brother, mother against daughter. Like Joseph Smith had prophesied, representing coming civil war, and this entire year of 2023, we've had this border crisis brewing in Texas, which may be the trigger for that, as indicated with the eclipse starting there. Oh, by the way, the Chiefs won that year, so there you go. The good guys win. But now we're in 2024, and we have this rematch, Chiefs and the 49ers. So if you take this as just a prelude, and the portion, now we're going to get the fullness. This is the second witness. Here's the first. In the mouth of two or three witnesses, I believe that this prophecy is going to be fulfilled. It already has a track record. If you take 2020 as any indication, it was just a few weeks later COVID broke in America, and life's never been the same. But now, the end times, I believe, is going to begin. So, just to recap, there's a lot going on, a lot pointing to this year. I haven't had the best track record in some predictions and thoughts, but man, you got Ezra's eagle. It has to happen this year if it's true. That is basically the bottleneck, as I see it. Book of Mormon Allegory is matching up with it. We've got the eclipse. 7 years of plenty have ended. We're starting the 7 years of famine. The first and the last, the Aleph and the Tav. It's coming through Eagle Pass, which has been the focal point of this invasion. Are we going into civil war over this with Texas and the feds? There's just there's a lot going on. Now you've got this prophecy. There was another gentleman that had basically the same prophecy. I forget his name, but he said the same thing. So a lot of witnesses. I believe something is happening. Maybe it's just speculation, but we are commanded to seek, even though we might get it wrong. I'd rather be watching than, in the all is well crowd. And here we are in Doctrine and Covenants, where the Lord does command us to seek. He says, "Verily I say unto you, the coming of the Lord draweth nigh, and it overtaketh the world as a thief in the night. Therefore gird up your loins, that you may be children of light, and that day shall not overtake you as a thief." The children of light are those that aren't overtaken as a thief. They're the ones that are watching. Here in section 45, "They shall look for me, and behold, I will come, and they shall see me in the clouds of heaven, clothed with power and great glory, with all the holy angels, and he that watches not for me shall be cut off." So, if you're not watching, he says you'll be cut off. And here we are in the Joseph Smith translation of Luke 12. "Verily I say unto you, he hath already come, as it is written of him. And again, when he shall come in the second watch, or in the third watch." So, is the second watch in America, third watch in Israel? I think so. "Blessed are those servants when he cometh, that he shall find so doing." And there's some good verses there, but I suggest you to read. But the disciples ask him, "Who then is the faithful and wise servant?" The Lord said unto them, "It is that servant who watcheth, to impart his portion of meat in due season. Blessed be that servant whom his Lord shall find when he cometh so doing. Of a truth I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all that he hath. But the evil servant is he who is not found watching." So keep watching, keep looking for those signs in the heavens. I know we just ran through it real quick. There's signs of the times, signs in the heavens, a lot of signs pointing to 2024. We need to get our house in order. Most of all, we need to be spiritually prepared. Of course, I encourage everyone to come to know Christ, to follow the allegory that is being laid out by the Book of Mormon. What is it teaching us to do? It's teaching us to prepare ourselves to become a Zion people, to come into the presence of the Lord, as it states in 3 Nephi 11. I hope that we all can come to know him, and that the day will come when no man needs to say, "Know ye the Lord," because we will all know him. That is the hope. That is Zion. That is what we are shooting for. There is light at the end of the tunnel. The sun will come out from behind the moon, the clouds, the darkness, and will shine again. We just have some dark years to get through ahead. So let's just leave that with you, and appreciate your time. Follow along if you want to know more, or if this is interesting to you. There's a lot more in the book. This is just kind of a superficial look through this. I suggest you find that on Amazon, and I appreciate your support. Thanks.